Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Babbling review show with myself and Sloth. West Ham 2, Wolves 1. It was a scrappy game. It was 3 points where we'll take it, we'll run, and we'll completely forget about it. But it's probably going to mean Julian Lopetegui stays in his managerial stint at West Ham. So there's positives and negatives to the win. But of course, the fundamental 3 points is the main objective. And yeah, it was a massive 3 points in what was, as I mentioned before, a very strange and diluted performance from both teams. But we're going to break down the goals and action from the game from a tactical perspective. So if you do enjoy it, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. And yeah, Sloth, without further ado, let's start with the lineups because we did mention in the preview Wolves did operate with a back three and a back four away at Everton in their 4-0 defeat. We expected some changes from West Ham on our side, but I think many were a little bit surprised about some of the inclusions in the lineup or some of the exclusions from the lineup. Obviously, before we even get into that, a massive, appreciation for Michail Antonio from our side, and obviously all the best wishes in your recovery. And obviously, we want to hope to see you get back on that pitch very soon. But in terms of the lineup, Sloth, was there anything that surprised you from our side? Obviously, Paqueta was still excluded from the squad. We played a front three of Kudus, Bowen, Somerville. Any surprises here?
No, I think this is what we've been calling for, really. I think we all know the reason why Tebow isn't playing, so it's not really a surprise he's been dropped. But I think that this is probably the way we'll go forward. Even though, let's face it, I think the ratings they're giving these players are very generous based off the performance. Bar Bowen, I don't think any. But Bowen and Somerville, I think Somerville is he just needs to find his shooting boots. And I must apologise as well. I've got a really bad hiccup. Like I don't know what it is. I've had it. I've had it all day. And drinking upside down. I've tried pushing down on the collarbone thing. I just cannot get rid of them. So if I just look like I'm sort of jerking every now and again, a matron, it is hiccups. So yeah, but I think that the scores have been very generous there. Lineup,
Yeah.
I think, is quite positive. It's probably what I think our strongest 11 looks like, bar and a performing Paqueta, but he's nowhere near that at the moment. And I think realistically, that's our best option.
Yeah, agreed. There wasn't really much more we could do with the squad. As you say, Paqueta firing maybe goes into that. Todibo in the back line for Mavropanos, maybe the only other one I would change there. And the front line, again, we don't really know what our best front three is at the moment. We're still yet to see Fulkirk in full action as well, so he could come into that lineup. But I think Bowen, Kudus, Somerville is probably our strongest front three on paper. Looking at the statistics from the game, we had just edged possession, 54% to their 46. We had 0.97 expected goals to Wolves' 1.47, 19 shots for both teams, just 4 on target for West Ham, 5 for Wolves, 1 big chance for West Ham to Wolves' 2, 1 big chance missed for both clubs. And yeah, we did seem to get a lot of corners, especially in the first half. We had 11 corners to Wolves' 0 throughout the game. So, I mean, the first half, there wasn't a lot to dissect, to be honest, Lough. We could have gone and picked out a few bits, but it was just really dross, really slow from us, really slow from Wolves. And, does that surprise you? Do you think both managers were a little bit tentative to maybe express themselves how they wanted to? Or was it just, it kind of epitomized everything that's going on with both clubs at the moment, slow, lethargic, and just that not having that clinical edge to go out and win a game?
I think it'd be remiss of me to say I was surprised we were poor. I don't see anything in this West Ham side at the moment, bar our attack, that isn't even that productive at the moment, that I think is going to be getting towards a European spot. And it's really disappointing given what, the season expectations were. But I think the stand for the first 45, we gave them more big chances, and that's not necessarily reflective, but I think when you look at the performances that we're at the moment, and particularly say the last couple of games against
Leicester.
Even Manchester United. If you go that far back, if Leicester, Manchester United, Newcastle sides, so many chances, and we'll continue to say it, but it's just not sustainable football. If you come up against sides who are performing, and we're very lucky that, say, Cunha wasn't on it last night. If we had been facing players, I think we'd have really struggled.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think this win and this 3 points is obviously massively important because it separates ourselves from the relegation zone by around 9 points now. So we do have that gap. We do have that little bit of a comfort blanket. But again, it really does, and it's such an easy saying to say, but papering over the cracks has never applied more than this situation. And when you're analyzing a manager's performance and the way a team is performing, there's more to it than just results-based business. And unfortunately, a lot of owners still look at things in a results-based way. But as we've mentioned before, it's not sustainable. So this win, although it's 3 points on the board and we've got the victory, and that's really fundamentally what matters at the end of the day, but it's not sustainable. And, the performance that we're putting in isn't warranting the 3 points over a consistent period. So we're just going to continue in this cycle. And, if you're not having the underlying data and the underlying performances, sometimes you're going to have that. If we'd have been at this position, in the league where we've seen a transformation. We've seen a difference in the team. We've been a lot better. We've been creating chances. We've been defensively solid, but we've been unlucky. And, the data would then suggest that things are going to turn. However, behind the scenes, it's the complete opposite. So we might have got the win against Wolves on this occasion, but it really does just cement paper over the cracks for me. It wasn't an inspiring performance by any means. And I think it's come out since the board weren't particularly inspired by the performance. But again, I don't see them acting. They may do before this review goes out, but I don't think they'll react off a win. I just don't think it's in their nature. So I think, the first half was pretty disappointing, but obviously the second half had some action points, Slough. But summarize that first half for me before we go on to the analysis of the second half.
Well, I think there's a lot to take away from sort of the fact that, like you mentioned, the owners weren't impressed. There was nothing in that first 45 minutes that I would look at and say we were doing better than Wolves or significantly better than Wolves. And I think there's a bit of a misconception about West Ham at the moment. And particularly when, I watched the game back and the commentators were expressing their shock that Paqueta had been dropped. And I just don't understand for the life of me how anyone can have watched West Ham for the last 12 months and thought that he's been playing to the point where he is undroppable. And I think when we watched 45 minutes last night, Soler looks a level above what Paqueta is providing at the moment. And
not just quality, but from an attitude perspective as well. I mean, we're going to get onto Paqueta in the second half, but his attitude coming on yesterday was unbelievable.
100%. And I think the sort of barrage of corners that we had, there was no real threat in the first half from us. I think Soucek being known at the back post from a set piece should send shivers any sort of Wolves fans spine at the moment, because that is a huge issue. It's really something that I think to us, the fact that our most dangerous threat from set pieces has been ignored for one key moment. And I think if we'd gone in at 0-0, it would have really set a negative vibe. There would have been a much tenser feel around the ground, and it was pretty mean the majority of the game. I think bar quite a few chances for Antonio for him, which is, of the utmost importance right now. I think it very worrying that but so it's on the pitch. They're not giving us any behind, and it's not a case of the whole side performing and trying to change things. It's Bowen, Somerville, and even potentially at times Kudus trying to make things happen so that we can make a change. And
Yeah.
I think it's a really difficult one to try and fix for us at the moment. And luckily we did a bit more in the second half, but I think bar that excellent header,
Yeah.
I don't think there was anything really positive to take away from that half.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, it's just, as you mentioned, trying to generate an atmosphere in that stadium is so difficult. Number one, like it has to come from the fans as well. But number two, when you're watching that type of performance, it's so difficult to get any energy behind it just because of how flat, how slow, how uninspiring it can be. And as you mentioned, really in that first half, it was fleeting moments from Somerville or Kudus trying to make things happen. And how often did we say we rely on those individual moments of brilliance under David Moyes? It hasn't changed really. It's not like we're creating goal scoring opportunities through good play, and even times when we try to, we're leaving ourselves way too exposed. But we went in at halftime 0-0. It was important that we came out and got the victory. I think bottom line, that was what was the most important from this game. I think every West Ham fan knew that there was repercussions if Lopetegui didn't win it. But for me as a fan, 3 points is all that mattered for this game, for this moment. Like there's more to it than a manager right now. And again, as long as we're in a stable position, that's going to kind of release a little bit of the pressure on making that change or making the wrong appointment if Julian Lopetegui was sacked, because I don't trust the board to get it right. But let's go through that first goal slot from the corner, because it was actually quite a nice work set piece. Wolves defending, I mean, they'll have to look at it themselves. It was really bad. They've been, I think, the worst team from set pieces this season. I think they've conceded the most goals. They've been really poor. We mentioned it in our previous show. They've conceded the most goals in the Premier League so far, and set pieces has been a real issue for them. So when we get into this position, obviously the corner's about to come in. We've had 9 or 10 corners by this point. You've got Kilman and Mavropanos and Soucek just waiting behind, waiting to make his movement. He then makes his movement to the back post, and Mavropanos and Kilman go into the centre. And then this is actually quite a crucial part. So you've got what we saw Arsenal do and what we've seen Arsenal do to a lot of teams. Kilman and Mavropanos just create that space for Soucek at the back post and kind of take away any of the Wolves players from marking him. And then Soucek has a free header at the back post. And from where I'm on the other side of the stadium, it kind of froze. Like time kind of stood still as this looped into the back of the net. I thought he was just heading it back across, but it was actually a really nice header from Soucek. And yeah, Wolves just were all over the place. They've all bunched towards Kilman and Mavropanos, and we capitalise and find ourselves 1-0 up 8 minutes into the second half. Sorry. So good set piece goal. Soucek once again in an important moment. Sloth, does that kind of go underrated throughout his time at West Ham? How often he picks these moments to lift us out in a situation where it looks a little bit dire?
100%. He is probably the most consistent player at the moment, and I think that he's almost become the new agenda. A lot of fans, where it's you either really don't like Soucek and don't want him to get picked, or you're backing him 100%. And look, I think he is someone that there was obvious criticisms to his game, and there's no escaping that. And
Yeah.
I think it would be remiss of any West Ham fan to say that they don't think we could go out and improve upon that central midfield. However, at the moment, he is not the player that we need to look at and address urgently. It's not him. So I think he's head and shoulders above anyone bar Bowen for Hammer of the Year at the moment. And I think, I mentioned that in the first half, I think the sheer amount of corners flattered us. And the thing that coming into this second half, we have one good routine, and which, again, we seemed completely devoid of in the first half.
So many short corners in that first half, weren't there?
If I could get a hold of the person who keeps telling us to take short corners, they would not be leaving the ground. Like they would not be going anywhere near the ground again, because we consistently waste any sort of chance we have. Or when we have such big players like Mavropanos and Soucek, why are we not consistently delivering? Yeah. It's so poorly thought out. And I understand this need to try and keep possession, but it's again, pointless possession. You have a clear chance to deliver a ball without any offside worry, and that is something that we have big issues with as well. Players not reading the line, or players not quite being quick enough in their movement. But God, yeah, the first decent corner of the game for us, and I mentioned that for Wolves, I thought they had defended quite well up until then, but of course they just lose the last player that you want to lose track of from a corner.
Yeah.
And Soucek deserves a lot of credit because he powers it back across the goal. And like you said, it's one of those where I think it put defenders two minds, where they either feel like it's going back across the goal or they feel like it's going out of play, and it's going to loop over them. And it has, it really dips towards the end of the movement. And I think for me, Soucek is the beating heart of that midfield at the moment. He's key to what we're doing, and him being such a physical presence allows the likes of Soler to go about their work, and to it kind of alleviates them a little bit.
Yeah, I think he obviously, in terms of attitude and application, he's right up there. And he's a lot of yesterday. We did a lot of long balls up there, whether that's a goal kick or a free kick or a long ball forwards, and often he was the target from those situations for the knockdowns. And he didn't win all of them, but he must. I mean, his head must take an absolute batter in every game. The amount of headers he has to do for West Ham is crazy. But again, he pops up with a really critical moment. We've said that he's got flaws, and we've said that if we want to progress, he's not the midfielder to progress with. But having him in your squad and having him at your disposal he's a fantastic weapon. And yeah, as you said, like, his attitude for West Ham has been second to none ever since he arrived at West Ham. So we'll never speak badly of Soucek in terms of him as a person or his attitude. It's just recognizing he does have some fundamental flaws as a midfielder in the Premier League. But again, he's been so good for us that it's hard to discredit what he is doing. And again, he's showing us what he can contribute and popping up with some really important moments. And you're thinking at this point, we need to go on and push and get this win. Obviously, we came close with the offside goal for Kudus to make it 2-0. And shortly after that, Wolves find themselves back in the game again through our own fault, really. I mean, let's just go through this, Slough. I mean, I think they had a corner or a set piece that gets cleared out. And then Emerson comes sprinting out, chasing the ball. So that's just, keep that in your mind, that we've vacated that left back spot. So two things need to happen here. This ball gets played back to the goalie from Semedo. So two things: either Emerson drops back into position and Bowen can push on as the striker, or if Emerson is going to push on, we need to have someone filling in for that left back spot. And we need to recognize that as a unit, as a team, that we have left that spot vacated and we're going to have to cover for it, because Wolves are going to probably look to exploit the fact that Emerson's charged up the pitch. And this is what happens. Obviously, Emerson continues his run. He's nowhere near getting to Johnson at this point, but Johnson pumps it forwards to the other side of the pitch. Again, Emerson's going to be out of position here. And then we find ourselves in this situation where they're creating an overload. Again, playing in that back three system with the wing backs allows them to do this. And Doherty and I think that's Cunha in the bottom right here. You can see they're already making that movement. Emerson is not in shot here. Somerville's got two players on him and trying to defend this. And again, I feel sorry for Somerville in this situation because there's not really much he can do. He tracks back all the way. In this situation, I'm looking at someone like Edson Alvarez to pick up or to shield in here, because Soucek's dropped between the two centre backs. I think his position's good. Mavropanos has got the Wolves striker. And then we just take it forwards a little bit as the ball comes wide for Wolves. And Doherty's made that movement inside. Somerville's seen it. Somerville has two players at this situation. But again, the midfield, Alvarez is kind of in no man's land right now. He should be kind of covering that position that Doherty's going to run into. He should be beside Soucek, not in this position. And we find ourselves, again, Mavropanos is kind of laser focused on the Wolves striker, who does make a good run, to be fair, to create that space at the front post. And it's a very good ball in. But again, there's that space that's left vacated by Emerson and the failure of Edson Alvarez to pick up or be alert to that situation and recover for his teammate. And the ball comes into Doherty. And, to be fair, it is a good finish on his left foot into the bottom corner. And we're back to square one, Slough. Again, victims of our own just own kind of incompetence really as a unit and not recognizing that there's danger when there should be. I mean, Emerson should never sprint out that far, but we should recognize the danger as a team and a unit to identify and nullify any potential exploitation from Wolves in that situation.
Well, no, I completely agree. And I think, of course, one of the players that I criticised or said not particularly performing well comes back to bite me in the backside and scores against us. But I kind of come back to this point about pointless possession and this playing style that we are trying to implement. And this is a case of pointless press. You know, why is Emerson pressing all that way? There is no reason that he should be doing that. You are a left back. Like, I understand that maybe people would go, oh yeah, but then they can just lump it along, the keeper's unpressured or those kind of things. Yeah, but you're a left back. Your very first thought should be get back into position or shout at someone else to go and chase that down.
Yeah, I mean, he presses this bit fine, and then it goes back to the goalkeeper. This is where you then revert back to left back and let Bowen push on, but he continues.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, you rightly mentioned about Alvarez there. The fact that we're leaving such obvious spaces between the defence and the midfield is creating issues. And, you know, if you go on to that next slide where you can see the ball is played in, why your central defensive midfielder is not parking himself to try and cut off any sort of ball like that, to be like, you know, to be put into the middle there, you should be placing yourself where you can minimize that risk. He should be meeting that ball aerially and, you know, minimalizing any chance that a ball can be played in there. And it's really worrying that we're not picking up these cues. We're not thinking, right, I'm going to try and minimize the space he can play a pass into. And if I'm leaving an open channel of space like that, what risk does that pose to us? Mm-hmm. Particularly as a central defensive midfielder, that is one of the key things that you should be doing in your job anyway. You know, people always like to talk about scanning and looking into those midfield areas.
There's no scanning at West Ham.
There is absolutely zero. And it's a really worrying prospect. And it's a great finish from Dundee. He stands up and say, I got that one wrong. But it's, you know, I meant about the flat and we were quite lucky that I think in the first half, it didn't turn nasty. Yeah. I think it very easily could have. And when Doherty scored, the place went flat. Like, it went really quiet. Bar them, obviously, who, you know, they haven't had much to cheer about, but they made a bit of noise then. And I think the thing for me is not just that we reacted and very quickly we gained the lead that we'll cover, but also just that I think it's the lack of control. And I feel like we didn't ever really control the game. Yeah. And even as soon as we scored and went 1-0 up, it felt shaky. It felt like we were expecting to concede.
Yeah, I agree. It was a very poor goal to concede, but as you say, the attitude of the players, we can't question that. I think the attitude of the players was good. I think the work rate of a lot of the players was good, but we just lack that quality in terms of what we're doing from a coaching stylistic style right now. But let's move on to the winning goal for West Ham, because there's a little bit of controversy around it. But before we even get to the brilliance of Bowen, so obviously we have a free kick in this situation. The set piece comes in from Jarrod Bowen. And the first contentious decision, really, or the only contentious decision for this build-up, is Mavropanos on the Wolves player in shot here. People are saying, is it a foul, is it or not? We'll get onto that at the end of this analysis. But the play carries on. The ball comes out to Somerville, whose shot is deflected out to Kudus. Kudus then plays it back to Bowen. And a crucial point here from Bowen. I mean, two things here. Number one, he's just sold the defender, which we'll get onto, because he's at this point, it looks like he's about to cross to the back post. So that's what Wolves players and defenders are expecting. The second point is he doesn't actually get his head up at all. So he's in this point here. His head is down. He knows exactly where he is. He then jinks inside of his man, brings it forward. And at this, again, his head is down. He knows exactly where the goal is. He doesn't need to look at where the goal is. And it's such an important quality to have as a forward, being able to do that, because those marginal gains and split seconds of time you get as a striker or forward to get your shot off is so difficult in the Premier League. So any advantage you can have is going to massively help. And that's what Jarrod Bowen does. He doesn't even need to look up, and then he just gets his shot off. And it's a fantastic finish to be able to get this in again, just by really repetition and knowing where the goal is instinctively. It's a fantastic finish. And it really, his performances just across the board, and the amount of times he's done this for us goes incredibly unnoticed from people who aren't West Ham fans, let's put it that way. But before it got to this point, stuff, I just want to go back. Is this a foul for you? For me, it's a foul.
I think it falls under that area of, I think it's harsh if it's given, because I've said many times, I miss the physicality in football. And for me, that is physical play. I also think it's one of those things where if Virgil van Dijk does that to a Wolves player, it's never given. If a top team does that, any other side is saying we're a top team. I just think this is where there needs to be consistency with the law, and if that, you will see 600 more of those type of challenges completely unpunished. I personally don't think it's something that is clear and obvious in terms of a foul. I think there's enough in it to just say that it's two defenders, it's two football players competing. I do think if it was against West Ham, I'd feel hard done by. We felt hard done by for the Chelsea penalty, but for me, I just think that it's something I'm missing. So maybe that's why I'm biased. I think that is a good old-fashioned centre-back tussle.
I think it's I don't mind the physicality. I just think he kind of puts himself on top of the defender with his arms, and he does push him down. And again, the only caveat I would say is, I think that's a foul personally, but there's a lot that happens after that following sequence that Wolves can defend better. So yes, I mean, it shouldn't have got to that point in my opinion. I think it is a foul, but again, Wolves have to look at themselves defensively, because the shot gets blocked, it goes out to Kudus, and then they have to defend that better from Bowen. But again, take nothing away from the finish from Bowen. It was absolutely brilliant, and it put us 2-1 up. And, you know, we haven't had many of those decisions. Again, we mentioned it against when we lost to Arsenal at home, when I think one of their set pieces, there was a foul on Paqueta where it was a similar situation. So I think it's a foul. But again, we went 2-1 up. We moved on. We got another disallowed goal through Kudus to make it 3-1, which was frustrating. And then we had a couple of penalty shouts from Wolves. So I think one of them was a penalty. I think one of them wasn't. So I'd be interested to get your take on it. The first one was this one, where they kind of go through, they break again. I didn't even want to include the analysis to how they got to this point, because it was shambolic defending from West Ham. That's all you need to know. And then the first contact is made just outside the box from Emerson. And I think that's what was communicated inside the stadium on the screens, is that they deemed the contact was outside of the box, which is why it wasn't given as a penalty. However, the actual push onto the Wolves player did happen inside the box. So the initial contact is just outside, but the main action of pushing over the Wolves player is inside the box. Is this a penalty for you, Sloth, or not?
We got lucky here. It's a penalty.
Yeah.
I don't understand why it's not been given. And I go back to what I'm saying about the incompetence of the officials and the lack of consistency. You know, I think if the officials had come out and said, you know, we didn't give the Mavropanos foul because we felt it was too much of a break in play to have affected the goal. Everyone actually, you know what? That's fair enough. This is just really baffling. This is straight football fans in general. And again, if that's Mohamed Salah, that's a penalty 10 out of 10 times. And I feel sorry for Wolves fans because they have had some shocking VAR calls.
Yeah.
I think there's no excuses for giving that. It's
a penalty.
It's been terrible across the past week or so. You know, we looked at the we all saw the challenge on whufc
from Caicedo.
Yeah, from Caicedo. That's a clear and obvious red card.
Yeah,
it's a clear and obvious red card,
and even the elbow as well from Kulusevski.
Yeah, like, and that's the thing is, what planet are these officials living on that they've not played the game? That's very, very clear. But they also don't understand the game that they're being tasked.
It just seems to be going the other way. Like, and again, I completely feel for Wolves fans because that should be a penalty in that situation. But it's not just happening to Wolves. I know Wolves fans will feel aggrieved because it's happened so much, but it's just happening across the Premier League so much in general. Like, it wasn't only last week where the goal got disallowed for us at Leicester, which was incredible to disallow a goal like that. And, you know, we're just seeing this crop up time and time again. As you mentioned, the Spurs Chelsea game, there's 2 instances there that they've got completely wrong. And yeah, I mean, we both agree that this one was a penalty. What was your take on the second one, Sof? So again, this kind of happened right near where I was standing behind the goal. So the first contact by Mavropanos is here, and you can see that there is contact. He puts his foot on the Wolves player's stud here, and you can see in the top left of your screen, it's 82:32. He basically has a second before he jumps to the ground. So he dives to the ground after he knows he's not really going anywhere and he's felt that contact on his foot. So it's not a causation of the contact. So for me, I don't think that's a penalty. I don't think there was enough contact, really. I know he stood on his foot, and from a screenshot, it looks quite bad, but I don't actually think that was a penalty, to be honest. And I think the way the Wolves player just dropped to the ground like a second after it happening kind of made up the mind of the officials. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on it? Do you think it was a penalty because of that contact? But for me, I don't think it was.
It's a contact sport. Contact does not make it a foul, you know. And at the end of the day, people, I think where the officials hide behind often is they say, "Oh, it doesn't meet the threshold." You know, when we had the penalty denied against Chelsea, and that he's very clearly pulled Somerville back by the arm. They said, "Oh, it doesn't quite meet the threshold." Well, for me, then the same criteria for this. I think, look, anyone who's played football has had someone stand on their foot at some point. They've had that.
Yeah.
It doesn't make you flop to the ground and throw yourself to the ground. If you're watching this and you disagree, you're entitled to your opinion. But if you're the guy who on a Sunday morning turns up, gets his foot stood on and rolls around on the floor, everyone is laughing at you and cringing. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing for a grown man to do that. It is. And look,
do you think that it's got to a point in the Premier League where players feel like they have to go down in that situation?
I think they feel like they have to go down, otherwise they won't get anything. It won't get looked at. And how many have seen it with Michail Antonio? You know,
oh, so many times.
Like a very clear and obvious that any other player, but because he doesn't go down or he doesn't make the most of it, it's not given.
Yeah.
And I think this is where, again, referees are not. And I used to. It used to really wind me up, and I back when I used to referee, and like you get kids, and kids watch this stuff, and they'd start rolling around when people stand on their feet, and I used to go, get up, it's not a foul. You're like, come on. And again, Wolves fans can disagree with me, and that opinion's famously
No,
are
I think
like.
we're in agreement on it. We're in agreement on it. Like that we said the first one was a penalty. Like he's clearly pushed him over in
I,
the box,
I,
but this one, it's just I don't think it's a penalty.
I think social media these days, people would look at that and they would take the shots and they would go, "There's contact. He stood on his foot. Contact doesn't mean it's a foul.
Yeah. I
It's a
mean,
contact
my
sport."
initial reaction as well, if I came out of the ground and saw that screenshot online, I'd be like, that's a penalty. But when you add context to what's actually happened and
Yeah,
look at it back, it's not a penalty. And as you say, if anyone's played football and you've got that contact on you, you know that it's not going to send you to the floor, like a little step on your toe like that. Like it's not like Mavropanos has deliberately pushed his foot onto him anyway. It's
yeah.
just that he's shielding the ball and he's just
If,
subsequently hit his foot. But look,
yeah,
I don't want to go into it too much because we've just spoken about officiating so much this season, and I'm sure
yeah.
every fan across the Premier
And we're
League is.
gonna,
Yeah,
unfortunately, we're
exactly.
gonna talk about it every week because that's how poor the officials are.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just so frustrating that they don't have the level of competence to be able to officiate such big matches. You know, Premier League is such a big investment and global brand across the world that it just deserves better officiating. That's full stop. And that doesn't just mean VAR, that just means in general, the general refereeing standards in this country is so poor. And it's, you know, it's having an impact on the results of big clubs like this.
Yeah, I think with this foul as well, it's key to stress that, as I said, contact isn't a foul; it's a contact sport. But if Mavropanos had wound up, taken the action to
Yeah.
stomp on his foot, 100%,
Yeah.
that's when it becomes a penalty, and that's where this sort of threshold is met. That's where that lies. But
Yeah.
because it's literally just a tangle during defending, it's not a foul.
Yeah, agreed. Well, I do feel for your Wolves fans. I mean, you're going through similar stuff to us, and you know it's never nice to lose a game that means this much, especially in terms of the table. And you know you still find yourselves in the relegation zone while we've climbed 3 points clear of it. But look, there's still loads of games to go. I don't think either of us performed well enough to win the game. To be honest, I don't think we deserved the win. I don't think Wolves deserved the win either from their performance, but again, we're going to see what happens with Lopetegui. I would expect he's still in the job for the next game against Bournemouth. I feel like it's come out that Wolves are backing Gary O'Neill as well, and they're fully behind him for their next game against Ipswich. So it'll be interesting to see if they trigger anything there. But I just think there's so many parallels between the clubs. But for West Ham, the most important thing was 3 points. And, you know, as we mentioned, all of the kind of dedications and stuff to Michail Antonio, it kind of puts things into perspective like this. You know, there's more to life than football. We're here to provide our breakdown on things, but as we mentioned at the beginning, we wish Antonio a speedy recovery and hope to see him back in a West Ham shirt soon, because that is not a fitting ending for all he's given in his West Ham career. But we won the game 2-1, Sloth. We got the 3 points. We move on to, again, another difficult challenge against Bournemouth next Monday night. So we've got a bit of time to recover, get a few players match fit, match sharp, like Fulcrook. I know he didn't feature, so maybe he's going to be utilised as a weapon over this Christmas period. Who knows? But 3 points on the board. We take it, we move on, and we look forward to Lopetegui ball next Monday at Bournemouth as well. So if you enjoyed the breakdown, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more content moving forwards. And Sloth, until the next one, come on, you Irons.